Hi, I'm Elizabeth Sherman, and today I'm doing an interview with Bill Hecht. He lives in Union Springs and grew up there as well. He talks on his memories of Union Springs, his website, and all the pictures he has there of his mother and her book that she wrote, and a whole bunch of other fun and interesting things. Joan Parsnick joins me in the interview as well with some questions. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my interview with Bill Hecht.
I'm Bill Hecht, and I was born in Auburn in '51, and grew up. Well, we lived on the south side of town. Originally, my grandfather had built a house there in the '30s. Larry Wolf lives there now. It was just a summer house, and then I think it was around 54 or 55, we moved to 4 North Cayuga, which is Chase Avenue. And that was right after Hurricane Hazel. And Dr. Treffs moved in across the street right next door here. Alan Hammond lived up the street. Alan had he was a very good musician. He'd studied at the Curtis Institute, and which was it still is one of the finest music schools in the United States. My mother was a Patterson, and the Patterson farm still exists, and that dates back to about 1835 or so. And my father, as I said, was from New York City, and his father had brought a business up, and they had it here in the village, and then in Seneca Falls.
So that's when he met your mother.
Yeah, my mother grew up on the farm. Was born at the farm, and she was very smart cookie, and she wanted to be a doctor, but and both she and her brother, I think, graduated at the top of their class. They went to school at a one-room school on Town Line Road, down the road from the farm, and then then they transferred to the high school where the Big M is, and they graduated, and both of them had scholarships to Cornell. I think she said it was $500 a year.
Wow.
And they didn't have the money for it. And she had raised some calves, and she sold some calves and got enough money to go to the Auburn Business School, and which I think was a 9-month course, and she learned, typing and shorthand. I guess there are different kinds. I just thought there was shorthand, but there are different styles of shorthand. But she did shorthand till the day she died. A lot of her notes are in shorthand. So she ended up working at the factory here, and ended up marrying the boss. She was all my life she was very thin, but there are pictures of her. She had a little extra on, and she said she discovered by eating carrots a lot to, I guess, satisfy her. And but she was it was a shame that she didn't become a doctor, because she would have been a very good doctor. And there are probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of stories like that of women that were barred from things or just didn't have the money to do it. And it was a great loss. I think she was, she regretted it all her life that she didn't.
But I don't understand. You said that she received a scholarship. That wasn't enough.
Right. And let's see, I know there's something called the Balfour Key. I should look up what the Balfour Key, wasn't there Balfour, some diplomat back around World War One? But that might have come with a little bit of money, but she had some scholarship to Cornell, but
It wasn't enough.
Yeah.
it wasn't enough to. Auburn Business School, I think it was at one time right in the middle of Auburn on Genesee Street.
And she also wrote a book, didn't she?
Yeah, and in the house, right 2 houses down at 4 North Cayuga, that had been a Ben Fordyce. And when they bought the house in probably 55 or so, the house was totally full of stuff. And I think you could have furnished probably 2 or 3 homes out of what was in the attic of that house. It's a really big attic meat space. And then up in the attic, she writes in here that in a pillowcase hanging on the chimney were all these letters. And I had transcribed them, I think in 6th grade, maybe 7th. I think I might have had Tom Eldred for a teacher then.
Uh-huh.
And then she also transcribed them and put them in the book here. I tried to get her, there was a book I ran across, it's a great book called Tomby. Rosengarten is the author. And he had found a diary of a Civil War plantation owner, and all plantations, some plantations, what they call plantations, were pretty small farms. They weren't these palatial looking things from Gone with the Wind. And I think it was one of these real small plantations. And then the war came, and the diary stops, and then it picks up afterwards, after the guy was wiped out. And so the book is actually 2 books. It's the verbatim diary, and then Rosengarten, I think, he took that and added to it with history and made it more come alive. And I tried to get her to do that, which would have been really, because she had an old style of writing, and she would have been perfect to do something like that.
Yeah.
So that, I think pretty much it's all just letters from him home. I don't know if there are any letters in here from his wife. And he lived down on the South Cayuga in a stone house, which is still there. When I was young, Bud Young lived there. If you go by that house, and the Greek Revival house next to it, to the north of it, you'll notice the front doors aren't in the middle, no, they have columns. The stone house, the Fordyce house, if you were inside looking out with the front door open, you'd be looking right at a column. And I thought, well, maybe there were only 2 columns on the house originally. And I looked at some old stereo views we have, and it had 4 columns. It was just like it. And I mentioned it to Claire Morehouse, and she had no idea and hadn't noticed it. But it's the dangest thing. Why would you put a door off center?
Right onto a column.
Yeah. The Yager house north of the village, up near Yager's Creek.
Yeah.
Not the house at Hibiscus Harbor Road, the brick house. That house I've really only been in it once or twice. You go in the front door and you could look right straight through to the lake, and you'd expect a grand staircase. There's no staircase. The staircase is off in a little hallway, which I guess makes a certain amount of sense when you're trying to heat a house in the wintertime with the wind blowing off the lake. You didn't want all the heat going up the stairs. So I'm off on tangents.
That's all good. It's all very interesting, I think.
Growing up in Union Springs, it was great. We lived right across from the library, my mother was on the board of the library and had a key, so I could go over there anytime. And the basement was just a dirt floor and was filled with old National Geographics.
Oh, wow.
And then there was a guy here in, I'm not sure where, Adams, and he was a big collector of Indian artifacts. And there were a lot of publications from the American Bureau of Ethnology, which is part of the Smithsonian. And they were there. There was a lot of great books in the library at one time. And under one of the windows, there was a little seat that's flipped up. And in there was the publication on the dig of Frontenac Island by William Ritchie. And I don't know if they've even got it anymore. Last time I checked, it was gone.
Oh.
They may have it because I think I got a copy and gave it to them to replace what they had.
Yeah. I read the one by a Wells student that talked about the history of the Indian.
I think I've sort of ringing a bell.
Oh, she did a paper and it was published.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, yeah, it was published by the Rochester Academy of Sciences, and then Ritchie also wrote a book originally published by the American Museum of Natural History of the Archaeology of New York State. I think it was republished by a different publisher. He did a lot of excavating all over the place. But there was Earl Turney, who when I was young, used to hunt with Dave Connolly and Nick Shockey and Harold Boomer and Louis Embody. Louis lived out toward Auburn. And I don't know how Earl Turney knew him, but Earl had the Red and White store, which is where the antique store is now. And if you notice it on the there's an old stereo view that where the antique store, that was another addition in the same style as the buildings to the south. And then there was the hardware store of Mort Kahn's. That was that was a magical place. Boy, they sold baseball gloves, fishing equipment, big long bamboo fishing poles. There was still a horse collar for sale. They cut glass. They did everything in there.
Oh, wow.
It was a really cool place. It was pretty much 2 stories inside with a rolling ladder to get stuff, and
That's fun.
it was a really cool place.
Mm-hmm. I would have loved to have seen
And
that.
the basement was just dirt, and what was it? I can't think of his name now. He was sort of the plumber. He lived up on 326. There's a picture of him I've got. It was probably from here. No, it was some of Bob Doremus's, or it's Bob Doremus. It would have been Bob Doremus's picture of him with fishing out of this guy. I can't think of his name right now. What else?
So that was owned by Kahn's.
Yeah, Mort Kahn had it,
Kahn.
and then he also sold wood mode kitchens, cabinets and stuff.
And then it was sold to Spinney, or?
Yeah, Byron Spinney worked there, and Eddie Tanner,
Yes.
and I can't think of, and Byron, I guess, bought it for a while, and then I don't know what happened. It was sort of like Vreeland's. They got clobbered once Home Depot and these other stores came in. It's pretty hard to compete.
Yeah.
Times change. The other thing that was amazing, to go through the Bob Doremus's photos and his father's photos of downtown were the number of gas stations. I think one picture, there were probably 5 different places to buy gas downtown. There was Jobson's, there was just north of what is Gillespie's now, there was Jesse Gaston had a gas station there. In front of, there were 2 on the north section of the downtown, because there's pictures of them either putting the tanks in or removing them. Down by where the new marijuana shop is. There was a gas station there. They're all over the place.
Yeah, we have a lot of them still
Yeah.
today.
Well, actually, there's only one now.
Yeah. I just meant they like to build a lot of them, it seems,
Yeah.
close to each other.
In Auburn, but here there's just the
No,
one.
just the
Right.
one.
And when I was young, the school, well, the addition on the north end, which is now an auditorium, that was added.
Yes.
It was all K through 12 in that one school. I did K through 12 in that school.
Wow. I didn't know it was all the way. It did K through 12. I just think of it as, you know, what it is now.
And then it's too bad this building, the school over here, was allowed to fall or be destroyed. It could have easily been saved. It was in good shape.
Yeah.
They punched a hole through it, but that could have been fixed.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that would have made a great house. It would have made a great apartments, senior housing or something.
Or some kind of store even. They could have done something
Yeah.
with it. That's what my mom was always said.
It was a beautiful, beautiful building. When the new bank downtown was built, I got Beth Crawford of Crawford and Stearns. She just sketched out on a sort of a napkin a design. I sent her something, and I tried to get the bank to do the roof line of the tower like that, but they just simplified it to some straight lines. And then one of the interesting things about that school, I remember I was only really in it once, snuck in. And on the tower, my mother said the whole district office was one room in that tower, which was probably half the space of this room. That was the whole thing.
District office.
Yeah.
And one person at a time.
Yeah, you probably could have gotten a principal and a secretary in there, and that was it. Compared to today, and quite different. And up in the attic was the science lab. I remember there were some floorboards up, and down in the floorboards there were some human bones.
Oh.
I don't know where they came from, and there was the arm, and they were wired together, and there was still some skin on them. So they must have gotten them from a medical school or something. It was weird.
Yes.
And then also,
Studying anatomy.
when they dug Troy's Marina, which I don't know what it's called now, that a lot of the fill from that came and was put in the parking lot for where right across the street here.
Yeah.
And there was I think it was a Connors that lived on Green Street. He'd go over and poke around, and he was finding bones in there. So the other interesting thing was Claudia Chappell did an interview with, I think it was Hartcar, and Claudia years ago swore me to secrecy of where, I can't remember if it was Fish Carrier or Steel Trap, was a good friend of the Cars. And before Claudia died, I called her up and I said, my memory was you told me he was buried someplace up Scobie Street. And she said, no. She said he's buried behind Alan Hammond's house, which is right back here. So this is the only source we've got anymore. And Claudia said it was between Capocephalos, which is Sid Wolf's, and Alan Hammond's house. So whether it's true, I don't know, but you might want to edit some of this out.
Or there'll be people.
And I have a bad memory on some of this stuff, but there was all kinds of stories that Alan Hammond had about the Bacchus, who was a banker and stuff, and I could never get my mother to write it down. She said it was better to let some of that stuff
just kind of go.
just kind of go. years ago, I interviewed my uncle, and there were stories that I had. My uncle had a 180-degree different twist on things, and it really impressed upon me that, oh, you can have newspaper articles, you can have anecdotes and stuff, and they may be totally wrong.
Yes, no, that's for sure.
It was a real shocker to me to see the takes on history.
Yes. Everyone has their own different.
Yeah.
Especially oral history. That really takes turns.
Yeah. Well, there's that famous Norman Rockwell cover of gossiping. You ever seen that?
No.
Well, it's a very famous Norman Rockwell picture where somebody's telling somebody and they turn around and tell somebody else, and the postman and the nurse and the doctors, and then at the very end, I think it goes back to the person who started.
They're going.
And they're surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah. But I've been very happy that the Frontenac Historical has opened up their collections to be scanned and shared freely. Because 20 some odd years ago when I started doing this, it was amazing the number of museums and still that do not want to share their stuff. It's really criminal and sad to me because a lot of this stuff, frankly, is public. And by not sharing this stuff, 20 years ago, my mother was still around, my uncle was still around. All these people were around that could have commented on this stuff and given us bad stories. They're gone.
Yeah.
And these museums missed out on that. And I've even run across county historians that absolutely refused to share stuff. It's really...
That's hard to believe because that's their whole purpose. Is to
there are a lot of reasons. I think I've got it, you don't have it. It's worth something, we're going to monetize it sometime. What you're going to monetize is minuscule compared to what you're going to get back by sharing it.
Yeah, especially what it would mean to, a family member or
Yeah.
just even the town.
Yeah. And I feel the more you share, the more it's an opportunity to make connections literally around the world.
Oh, yes, it is.
And by sharing it, I think you get a better chance of getting returns of gifts. I'm always telling museums, go to people before they die. Do what you're doing, get audio interviews, and ask them if they've got family albums and stuff. You don't have, it'd be nice if you donated them, but could we at least scan them?
Yeah, and then we have them.
In the case around here, I'll scan the stuff, I'll restore the stuff for free. And so many places turn their nose up at that. You'd pay tens of thousands of dollars for that, and they throw it away. The Cayuga County Historian's Office was almost 20 years ago. I had free access there for a while, and they have a massive collection of old photos from the Citizen Advertiser. I could never figure out how they're organized, and I randomly went through pulling some of the stuff. They were negatives, so you had to scan them and turn them into positives. But there were pictures of, right next to me when growing up is Hobson's lived there now. That was Elsie Yager, and she was a distant relative somehow, and she'd been in a bad car accident, And there were pictures in the these citizen archives at the county historian's office of the accident and stuff. One of the pictures is a picture of Bob DeRemus holding his son Malcolm as a little kid. The bus she crashed into, and it's just a tremendous amount of stuff which will probably never see the light of day if they don't open it up to somebody to go through it.
Yeah, that's really too bad.
And I ran across at another historical society. I was doing sheetrock for them, and I had a key to the building. And one night I was in there, and in the wastebasket were 2 photo albums. I pull them out, and they're pictures of this village, not this village, but someplace else. And they said, well, we threw them out because we didn't know anybody in the pictures. Well, it's like, look what's behind the people, the buildings and settings. And the next day they were back in the garbage again. And they finally got saved. And now with facial recognition, I know in Adobe Lightroom, I think there's some other there are many other programs that do facial recognition. And we should do it here. I don't get around to it, but we tried it down in Genoa one time. And if you have a picture of little Billy Hecht at 5 years old and you can identify it, the programs then go through and say, we think this is little Billy Hecht and you either check yes or no. And right now I'm working on that Hammond photo album that's here. And I talked to Pat the other day. We've got to see if I thought I had a picture of Alan. There's a picture that misidentified as Alan Hammond as a husband of somebody, and Alan never married. And but in this photo album, which on the cover it says 1864 or 5, I've forgotten. There's somebody in there that reminds me a lot of Alan, which very well could be a father or grandfather of Alan. And it will be very interesting to someday go through facial recognition. And there's so many pictures, there's a little carte de vis that are unidentified. And there's a good chance we can start identifying some of this stuff. I'm sure that's exactly what Google and Facebook, I'm sure, is doing with all the photos. They've got a picture of you or me that's identified, and they're going through millions of pictures, pulling that out. Mm-hmm. So it exists. It's a tremendous.
I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of pictures of my family that I don't really know who they were.
Well, I've got pictures of my mother and her brother. And when kids were probably 3-4 years old, they dressed them like both boys and girls,
right,
like girls.
Uh-huh.
And one of them I thought was my uncle, and he said he was not happy that I'd misidentified it. Turned out it was my mother.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've always been interested in history then?
Yes and no. I originally went to school. My childhood hero was Roy Chapman Andrews. My mother would read all about dinosaurs to me. Mm-hmm. And that's why I ended up going to Beloit College in Wisconsin, because that's where he was from. Mm-hmm. And he really is who Indiana Jones was based on.
Yeah.
And he left Beloit, and he rose to be president of the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, which, boy, when I was a kid, this had been in the early 60s, mid-60s, that museum was pretty much what it was from the 20s and 30s. It was a dark, I wouldn't say dusty, but it was big and not well lit, and it was... It was an experience to go through that museum like that. That's why I like museums like this with so much stuff on display. Mm-hmm. So many museums clean everything up. And I remember years ago going to the Glenn Curtis Museum in Hammondsport, which used to be in an old school. everything was.
Everything was out.
You'd go up the staircase and there'd be a carburetor, engine parts here and there all over the place, and you could smell the oil and dust, and it was really nice. And but so many places are hidden away, so many pieces. If you go to probably most universities and look at their online catalogs, years ago I went down and dug out the Courtney papers, and there was that picture that I showed when I did the presentation here of this. I still can't believe it. That magnificent stone building mill that was at the South Mill Pond.
Yeah.
And that was in the Courtney papers. And I'm quite certain we never knew that was there. And if you went online at Cornell or many places, there may be a listing that said, 60 boxes of items from Professor so-and-so, and boxes 23 through 27 are assorted photographs. Well, unless somebody goes through them, you have no idea what's in there. One of the archivists years ago down at Cornell pulled out these, I think it was Liberty Hyde Bailey, these huge scrapbooks that he had. He'd gone around all over central New York and the southern tier, taking pictures of creameries and dairies. And you never see that. It's just amazing, the stuff that's out there. And if you don't have, I run across it all the time. Somebody like that one case where they were in the wastebasket. We don't know who that is, and all they're interested in is the people, and they don't care about the buildings. Like there's one, we don't have a decent picture here of the original Methodist Church, which is, I call the Methodist Church, I don't know what to call it now. It's
United Ministries.
United Ministries. Well, the parking lot behind there is where the original Methodist Church was. And when it became Walter's Garage, and I think it was Elena Christensen has a good picture of it, but it was totally changed. And when I was a kid, it was still there, and we used to play basketball inside. I took off the wall inside. I stole it. That Hanford's Balsam of Myrrh banners that are around here, and pieces of cardboard came off the walls there. Alan Avery and I would kick ourselves that we didn't steal the signs from the train station.
Somebody did, though.
I've asked, and a number of times, and nobody's coming forward with those. And there were obviously two of them. And boy, I wish we'd stolen them, because we'd have them now. And now they're probably sitting in somebody's...
And you probably wouldn't have had to steal them. You probably could have just asked her, and they would have given them to you gladly.
Yeah. I don't know, we would have had to get a ladder, and we would have been scared to death. I wish we had, because they'd be there now.
You wish you weren't such a good guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I know. There's a lot of signs that are gone from downtown stores, which would have been nice.
Yeah.
Like the one from Gillespie
Gillespie's.
and the Bob Doremus.
The pharmacy.
Yeah.
The hardware.
Yeah.
No, it would be nice to see those. I just hear people's stories, which is always nice. But
I love the
like
picture
to.
that probably was by Bob's father of there's a girl on the back porch of probably Doremus's drugstore. And then there's another picture of a guy cranking, making ice cream. That was called Shinbone Alley. Was in
back there.
Yeah. There was some...
We have to put a sign up.
There was some newspaper article about a robbery at the bank here, and they referred to it as Shinbone Alley or something.
I guess there were a lot of things to bang your chin.
That was the other thing. When I was a kid, the streets were lined with massive American elm trees. They were you don't even, you've never probably
No.
hardly seen it.
No, I haven't.
They gave a grace and beauty to the countryside that is gone. There are a few around. I know of a couple of really big ones. I remember where I live, which is the house originally was a swamp, and it was covered with massive American elm trees. And I remember my father having them sprayed, but we lost them all before there was a cure of you can inject them now. But I think that only lasts so long. It was weird. Years ago, I went down to Penn State, and there was a whole row of some that were probably 40 years old, and it was like seeing somebody come alive. That's why what you're doing is so important. Years ago, I don't know what happened to it. I remember going down to the farm to watch, I think it was Arthur Rubinstein, and on TV. I was going to watch it with my grandmother, and I had an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. And I remember being annoyed with her I wanted everything quiet. And years later, many years later, I put this tape on. I didn't know what was on it, and there's her voice. And wow, to have what you're doing 30, 50, 100 years from now will be mind-blowing for people to hear the voices. It doesn't matter what they're talking about, but just to hear the voices is amazing.
I always love listening to people, going to museums and hearing what people have
I
to
mentioned
say.
to you, one of the people you should do is Dick Harshberger, because Dick worked with Howard Davis, and Howard Davis built this building. He built the bank. He built my parents' summer house, where I was living until recently. He built a lot of things around. I remember, I think he always built a little shed. It was sort of the size of that duck shack. And one of the sheds somehow ended up at Mr. Roby's house, the flying evangelist. He lived up through the back lots. And have you seen those pictures?
Yes.
There's one picture or news article about Roby taking off from the Union Springs airport. And from the best of I can figure, there might have been a landing strip behind where
I was gonna say
where the firehouse is now. And he must have taken off, and he landed in a tree at Emily Mayer's.
Yeah.
There was a picture of the plane up in the tree. And when I was a kid, on the shed was a propeller from the plane.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to ask my grandmother. She was a pilot, or she got her license
really?
when she was younger. So maybe she flew and landed, but I don't know. I'll just have to ask.
Everybody should get a chance. I think some schools years ago, they used to take kids to like Syracuse and for a plane ride. When I was a kid, I don't think it's as much now, but for kids to go to Syracuse was a big deal. A trip to New York City or Washington, D.C., which was a senior trip, that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for a lot of people. People should fly over. I've been fortunate to go up quite a bit with a friend of mine, and to fly over the Finger Lakes. I can give you the name of the guy, and it's one of the best value. You can't fly any cheaper. And to go particularly over the Western Finger Lakes and stuff, you get a whole new, and the greens are so intense from when you're up in the air.
Yes.
The other thing I've been interested in was, when I was in college, I got more and more interested in geology, and where Beloit had a very good geology department. So I've been involved with geology in the area. And, my thesis was on on the geology of the area.
Oh, wow.
It was weird. I did I farmed for quite a few years with my cousin, and he and his father and another guy had bought the old Auburn gas field, which was run by Ashland Oil, and it was getting pretty old and tired. They had to do a lot of repairs, so we drilled a number of gas wells around. We drilled 2 for Harris McIntosh. We drilled the Wells College well, two at Stairs's, a bunch of other ones.
There's one across from us.
Yeah, we didn't drill that
You
one.
did do that.
That one, the high school drilled, and the geologist on that was Art Van Tine, who was a state geologist for oil and gas, and we were good friends. And I pulled all the information out for that and gave it to him and some others, and I said, you're going to hit the seams formations where the Union Springs water wells are at these points, and liable to run into trouble. Well, they did. And and then the McDonald's Point site, I wanted to get that saved. That was 110 acres, and I think 45 or 4,800 feet of shoreline. I and a friend got the state in from the Open Space Committee, and at the time it was when it came up for sale. The state said, "Geez, we pay $1 million just for the fishing rights to the site," but they didn't have the money. It went for I think around 1.4 million, and that was 110 acres. And the real estate agents and the people didn't know you could have then drilled at a minimum 2 gas wells on the property, and the school could have. Looking back, it was a heck of a deal, and it included all the wetlands, marshlands, and woods behind the school, which is a beautiful area. Alan Avery and I used to hike that. Just seemed like every day we'd put hip boots on and walk through there in the fields. It was just a gorgeous place. But I frankly wouldn't have lost too much sleep if the state came in and bulldozed the house. It's a big mansion, but it's not. To have had all that land for the public would have been nice. And there's nothing stopping from somebody now or in the future. Think of standing at Frontenac Park and looking over at McDonald's Point with a house every 70 feet. A big white house, no trees. People like to cut all the trees down. That could just be wall-to-wall homes and docks with little gazebos at the end. And it could have been saved as a public park. It's really a shame.
No, it is.
Union Springs, I lived for a few years in Skaneateles, and we tried to save Sandy Beach. And we had all the money for it, but the town fathers dragged their feet on it. They didn't want it. And out of that, the John Ben Snow Foundation, which was supporting our efforts, they got really annoyed, and they put up money for the Maxwell School at Syracuse, the students to do a study of public lake access across the United States. Well, it turns out Union Springs, that park is incredibly unique for communities, particularly this size, to have that much lakefront. It's just too bad the lake is in the condition it's in. But at least it's someplace for the public to go.
Mm-hmm.
And we're losing public access. And we're losing the views. That's why I'm concerned about north of Havana, Chris's Hill. There's no protection on that. That's the north side of Chris's Hill is going to be chopped up for lots. And when Springport put in sewer and water along the lake here. Before that, you needed 140 feet of lakefront to build. Once they put sewer and water in, they chopped it to 70 feet. Well, 70 feet isn't much. As I said, think of looking at McDonald's Point with a house every 70 feet. It would totally change the feel of the area.
Yeah, no.
And McDonald's Point's got to be covered with Indian remains and archaeological sites on there.
It really looked terrible.
Yeah, it would. And there's no reason it can't be protected if they did an overlays, what's called an overlay zone. And this applies to Chris's Hill. Chris's Hill is on the open space plan as a protected view, and I've said for years, if people can't see the lakes, they're going to really cease to care about them. It's bad enough as it is now. But if they can't even see the lake, and Ledyard and the Cayuga County Planning never seemed to tell them to put an overlay zone in, which would have protected the view. And there's nothing stopping that. And I worked for a while in Casanova, and I remember they had a Citizens Advisory Council, which Cayuga County used to have, called the Environmental Management Council, and I was on that for 25 so years. It was just advisory. And I remember one meeting in Casanova where south of Casanova, somebody wanted to build a house right on top of a hill. And Faith Knapp, who was an amazing woman, and she and Dorothy Reister of Art Park in Casanova, they were two powerhouses. And remember Faith at this town planning board meeting, she was just a little thing, always dressed to the nines, and she spoke very quietly. And she'd go, I remember that particular meeting, she was just said, well, if you move the house down, it won't be on top in the view shed. And if you plant this and this, and if you paint it this color, and they agreed to it all. But most communities and most people don't. You're not telling me what I'm going to do to my house.
Yeah.
And
they want to do what they want, and they don't.
Well, I can understand that, but I've seen so many cases where it happened. It even happened in Casanova. Somebody built this god awful ugly house. They were only there for like 5 years, and now the community's stuck with this thing.
Yeah. But
on the other hand, a good friend of mine in Casanova told me a lot of the zoning regulations, if you wouldn't, you're trying to protect the flavor of a village like Union Springs or Casanova, but in Casanova, the present zoning regulations wouldn't allow a lot of the buildings that they're trying to preserve to be built. So it's a tough situation.
Yes, it is.
Once they're done. Well, tell us just a little bit about all the photographs you take. That's kind of a passion of yours, taking pictures of anything that is of interest to you or that you can share with other people.
Yeah, when I did the show, I don't know how many people wrote it down, but about it, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I haven't updated it, which I should. There's a site called Smug Mug, and I put a ton of stuff up there, and it's kind of a goofy site. I was on it today. Down in the bottom right corner, there's a magnifying glass, and you press that for search. Then you're expecting something to pop up down there, but it pops up here, which drove me nuts. But you can search for Union Springs or the Frontenac Steamboat or railroads or whatever, and you'll get hundreds of pictures, and it is possible to download them, high quality downloads, which you're free to print off for your own use. And that's another thing that's nice about the Frontenac. I should the site doesn't, and the database doesn't always say where the stuff's from. And that was a failure on my part. But at least, God forbid, a place like this or the county historians or something, King Ferry, whatever burns down, at least we've got something.
You have pictures.
Yeah.
As opposed to not having anything at all.
Yeah.
How did that whole thing start, the website? And
I got started of digitizing stuff, which scares the dickens out of me because it's, I wouldn't trust what I'm doing to be around, even tomorrow. It's scary.
yeah.
If that would be something for the foundation we're talking about to fund, which would be to prioritize certain pictures and have them that I've cleaned up and print them out. But my mother was alive, and when I started this, and she'd be in Florida and I'd be up here. And I remember we had Microsoft had something like Facebook is now, where you can see and talk to somebody. There was a lag, but I remember one time she was down in Florida and I was in her office up here, and we're talking about something. She said, "Well, if you pull that book down behind you and go to such and such a page." And I could take the little camera and put it there so she could see it. And I had hundreds of emails from them. Sadly, somebody threw them out on me. I could have killed them. But she's got quite a few papers, and so it was just a way to communicate with my mother and help her out with her genealogy stuff. And I think it was because so many places shut their doors to sharing.
Yeah,
That
you
really
wanted
ticked
to.
me off. And so, fortunately, like Frontenac here, Genoa Historical, Skaneatlas Historical, until about 2 years ago, I was going regularly up to Jordan. And there was a gal I was working with, Lynn Fall. She grew up in Jordan. She has an encyclopedic memory of Jordan. She did a site called Jordan Memories. That's there's maps with pictures that you can click on. She did all this free, and they kicked both of us out. It was bizarre, totally bizarre. They were getting literally tens of thousands of dollars of free help, and kicked it away. And as I said, there's still, I know there's still a few old timers in Jordan, which is, you ever been into Jordan?
Yes, a couple times.
Cool town or village. And, not getting this stuff out to the public is a shame. Real shame. So that's been my driving force. It's also a form of therapy, scanning and restoring. I get hours can go by and I've totally forgotten what's happened. And so many pictures, once they're restored, you can bring out details that weren't there. And then you can blow them up. One of the first things I ever did was to, at the farm, there were these huge wall maps of Cayuga County, Seneca County, and that are hanging out here. And I looked at them all my life. My mother looked at them all her life. But until we scanned each town one by one, and you could see them on a computer screen and zoom in, we kept seeing details we'd missed. I particularly remember, I think there was a plank road south of Union Springs down toward Great Gully. I'd never seen that. And then when you match the census data to the maps, it's very helpful because they call it a numerator, the person taking the census. in the 1850s would have been going down the roads in a horse and buggy probably. And if there was a whole bunch of Shanks or Smiths on a road, you can actually sort of follow them down the road as they went along. It's a great, it's not 100% that you're getting the right person, but it helps. So that's a great tool. The other thing, which I wish I had more time for it, and it'd be a project for any museum, would be to transcribe the census records. And everybody knows, not everybody, but most people know of the census records. But if you dig further into the microfilms on the census records, for a lot of the years there were agricultural census. And during the Civil War there was a Civil War census, and the agricultural census I dug out for Aurelius, Springport, Owasco, and Skaneateles years ago, and then compared that data to modern data, and I was quite astounded at the similarity of land use between then and today, of the acres. But what the acres were used for was quite different. There were huge sheep populations. For a farm to have 6 cows, that was a big deal.
Yes.
Most people have 1 or 2 cows, maybe 4, but 6, you're talking big time. They were done every 5 years I haven't seen the 1845, which they said started, but at least for Cayuga County, from 1850, 55 to 1875, there was an ag census. And I know our farm, and they go into how many bushels of wheat, pounds of butter. One year they did rugs, honey. It's very interesting to see the yields and get a sense of what they were farming back then. And I think it's Kathy Decker. If you go on the Cayuga County Gen website, there's a number of census records that have been transcribed, and I think there are Excel spreadsheet forms that somebody's already done, so you don't have to invent that. You just need somebody to go through and read the census records, and they're not always accurate. I discovered when I did this, I think there were 3 copies made, and they were all hand done. So there was a master copy, and then there were, and I found some transcription errors in the one. I think it was the Skaneateles one. I also photographed which should be redone, the original minutes from the town of Aurelius, which date back to the 1790s, and the town of Milton, which includes Genoa, and then extended into Tompkins County for a time period. And up at the town barn here on 326, they have some of the tax records and stuff going back to the 1830s or so. I wanted to get those for Aurelius. Unfortunately, they threw them out. And they said, well, we thought the county had a copy. Well, the county didn't have a copy. So those are, and I haven't been able to determine, I've gotten mixed stories. It sounds like a town clerk can throw stuff out like that, which is just crazy to me. It's a shame.
They're allowed to do that, yeah.
I'm not sure about that. But,
yeah.
In any event, these were thrown out, and I don't know if I mentioned it the other night when I spoke here of the. I think it was Millie Lewis loaned me the Presbyterian Church records, and did I mention that at the? And those go back, I think, to the 1830s, and there was stuff in there of Bill Hecht seen on the street in an inebriated state for the 3rd time, and if he doesn't present himself to the elders of the church, he'll be excommunicated, or swearing all this kind of stuff. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. That's very common for churches. Wielded a lot of
Power.
yeah. If you weren't part of the group, you're in big trouble. The other thing that was really cool was this last
Not
winter.
anymore.
Last winter, Warren Albrecht, who's a real powerhouse. Warren doesn't get enough credit of what he does for this community. He gave me access to the Masonic Hall here, and they had a lot of these framed pictures of past Masons, and they had names on them, pictures of people we didn't know. And again, that was a tremendous resource in the future for facial identification. We got these with positive IDs on them. And Sketty Atlas, I got access to them last winter and offered to do the same thing, and I've never heard back. And they have a huge collection, a little room in their Masonic Hall of pictures with names. It's just amazing.
Well, that will mean a lot, the picture recognition to
Yeah.
all museums.
Yeah.
I really want to get, I gotta, that'd be another thing for this foundation, if they would fund, I guess, I've got most everything in Adobe Lightroom. And that's on a Mac, but I would imagine that file can be converted to a PC. And I have investigated, there are other, I think you could export it to another database that would be more open source, free. But if that way, everything I've done could be sitting here for people to go through. Other than that, those books my mother put together.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got the originals of those, and those should be here too.
Those are very useful.
Because I copied those off. I think it took 2 days at a copy machine, copying those. And I think there's a set here and a set, but she added since then. And I had her copy of the architectural survey that Cornell did of Union Springs, and I loaned it to somebody. I did not write down who I loaned it to, and they never returned it. And I kicked myself because she had a lot of notations and corrections in that. And my mother, you didn't question my mother on her research. She she knew the people, she lived it, and so her stuff was pretty dang accurate. And I hope someday that will turn up. There's a copy around here, and there was one done of the village of Cayuga too.
We have one here, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I've looked at that. Maybe putting that
The other thing I should do
on
is
Facebook, right? That you're looking for it.
I've wanted to some nice
Here.
day in the spring before the leaves is walk all the streets in Union Springs, taking pictures of all the homes as a record would be nice. Probably get arrested for snooping around, or people probably think I'm doing something. There's Google
There's no
Earth.
policeman here,
Or
so don't
casing
worry.
them for.
There used to be a policeman here. There's a picture
I know. We used
floating
to,
around here of some guy, I think, on a motorcycle. And I think it's got a name of the guy. I forgot. I don't know when Union Springs last had a policeman.
at the police station and everything, we have right down at the end of the hall, we have that information.
Oh, yeah. I don't know where the police station was. I remember the Bowens. There was Gordon and Seymour and Eddie Bowen, and just the nicest people. I think it was, forgot if it was Gordon or Seymour or both of them. They were pretty good. They were all big men. And behind where Jobson's is, I think the building's still there. That was I think that was a town barn. And they pulled the snowplows in there. And then upstairs they had or sort of like, it's a little area with these old overstuffed chairs and beat up chairs, and all the old mailboxes from the old post office was there, which is where the marijuana shop is now. The other person I remember as a kid was Bill Smith, and he was a watchmaker and repair guy. He had his shop where the bait and tackle place is now. Mm-hmm. That was, I think, a Yager store at one time. And as a little kid, Bill set me up with at a table, and he had studied. He could, I believe, could make a watch from scratch, pretty much. He'd gone to school for that. And I remember in the window he had a huge pendulum clock. It was probably almost five feet high, with these pendulums with vials probably that big around, that long, full of mercury. Oh. For weights. I've always wondered what happened to that. And he lived upstairs. He had a daughter. I don't know what's happened to him. And one of the things I'd like to see happen is behind Fox Apartments is a marshland, which would make a beautiful. It'd be nice if that'd be a good scout project. Is to clear up. Well, they don't own it. They might own some of it. And there's a beaver pond and dam back in there. I was back in there with a friend of mine who's since passed. Just a few years ago, I took him in there. And that'd be a really nice nature place.
Yes, it would.
We almost had, well, I wouldn't say almost, the boat museum that's now in Hammondsport, antique boat museum in Hammondsport, and then the Museum of the Finger Lakes, which is up at the north end of Keuka Lake in Branchport. When they were contemplating that, I had them come over here because I said the perfect spot was the old mill. Mm. And in a dream world, it would have been, first of all, it was on the canal system. It's qualified as an economically depressed area. It had the mill pond as a source of water if they wanted an aquarium or something. The mill pond actually, I don't know if there's still trout in it, but the mill was a fish hatchery. My mother remembers going there for field trips. And the museum people, they looked at that and they said, well, there wasn't enough parking. Well, where they are now, it doesn't have, I believe, have anything like as much parking. And then I believe Pleasant offered them the house and 200 and some odd acres of land where the spa is now, or there was talk of where the baseball fields are south of Wells College. Neither would have been on the lake, but that would have been a real boost to the community if that could have come in.
Yes, it would have.
Yep, and it
Interesting.
really qualified for grant writing like crazy. Mm-hmm. And if they could have dug the canal back out all the way up to the mill like it originally was, it made much more sense as a Finger Lake. The other thing I tried talking him into was having 3 museums, not one. He already had the Museum of the Earth down in Ithaca, which is one of my favorite museums in the world, because it's not dumbed down. There's all grade levels there. And then you'd have an eastern gateway to the Finger Lakes, which would be here. And then you'd have something over in Hammondsport, which is the area where everybody was coming from. And but it's now in Hammondsport and Branchport. They bought a school, but I think they're tearing the school down. So, what could have been? At least
or possibly still could be. I mean,
well, at least the mill still stands.
Yes.
The northwest corner's kind of iffy, and the whole west side of the building really needs to be repointed, because that gets all the weathering bad. And quite a few years ago, the roof was in bad shape, but fortunately they put a new roof on it to protect it. I was astounded that the building behind Palmer's garage that Oscar Schleppe had, they took that down a few years ago, and before they took it down, the roof was starting to go. And it was a stone building, but the inside was brick. And boy, once water gets into a building like that, that started falling apart within a year. It was just amazing how fast that building deteriorated.
Once the roof went.
I just put up the other day, I finally found it again. I took a picture of the garage as it is now, and there's a really nice old picture of, I think it was a Bacchus mansion that was there up on the hill behind there, and I superimposed the old with the new. The house could have stayed. Certainly the building that Oscar had could have stayed, and there was another matching building with a connector shed in between that was still there when I was a kid. I don't remember the mansion at all. I think that one. When I was a kid, what we called the Legion, which is where the new bank is, was still there. That was the north end of that was a Winiger house, and that again would have made great senior housing or something. Right in the middle of the village. Lost two great buildings, the old school and that.
Yes, we did. Oh, my mom always talks about those and how she wishes they hadn't been torn down.
But do you remember the picture of that we found in the Courtney papers of the mill that was at the South Mill Pond?
Yes.
Unbelievable building.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know when that went. Has the Union Springs Advertiser been digitized?
I don't know.
It's in tough shape.
I would guess not.
The only thing that could be done with that, we'd have to photograph it, and it's the paper it's just falling apart.
We should talk about that.
Yeah, we should.
That guy from Fulton History will do it. I don't know if he'd use. I've got to meet that guy someday. I don't know if he uses a camera or how he does it, but he'll do it for free, as far as I know. The trouble with microfilming stuff, when I started this, I looked into microfilming, and it turned out there are a number of different kinds of microfilm and processing of microfilm, but there was no color microfilm. And when you microfilms, most people just set the contrast way high, and photos that are in newspapers just turn black for the most part. So those are lost. And I remember going to a library thing on archiving stuff down in Ithaca, and the lady said, well, get your stuff microfilmed, and then you can throw your newspapers out. And I and another guy from Moravia jumped up and said, no, you don't do that, because there's always new technology coming along. And
it can get a bad. So you couldn't do that, the advertiser. You wouldn't attempt to do that, digitize.
It should be digitized with a camera. And there's certainly some real. I back in 2005 I got the best Canon camera you could get then, which is now dated. I think it was 12 megapixels. Now I got another one with 16, and now there's ones up in the 40 to 60 megapixel range.
Wow.
To do something nowadays, I have to, with the cameras I've got, I have to do it in sections, and then in Photoshop you can stitch them all together. And there's an awful lot of stuff that when I first started scanning stuff here, the scanners only went up to 600 pixels, and now I would do those at $2,400 or $4,800, stuff that's irreplaceable. I just did a bunch of nitrate negatives for the Canal Society, and those are, oh God, did they stink. And they're flammable. And we scanned those at 4,800 because it was a one-shot deal, and then they were going to destroy them because they're so unsafe. But there's an awful lot of, as I said, a lot of stuff here needs to be redone. And again, if that foundation could fund I think it's like an Adobe subscription or some other thing. It'd be like it's under $200 a year if you've got a computer that can handle it. But then you need a hard drive or two. You need probably you probably need, I don't know, probably 40 terabyte of stuff to take everything I've got. Because now I try to scan it really high resolution because storage is relatively cheap.
We store. This will be stored too.
Yeah, and videos. I don't know how big an hour of files used to be. Of digital files was quite a bit. And I've got to get to you. I've got 2 tapes. I just had I went to Industrial Color Labs, and I had Kodak do it, and they said, "You want them on CD?" And I said yes, and I didn't think what they format, and they put them into a video format, not an MPEG or something.
Oh.
But I did find a program to convert them, and there's 2 tapes of Bob DeRemus, an interview I did with him years ago.
Oh,
That'd be
And
nice.
I think I can find it. I did one. I interviewed Bob Muggleton. I hope I've still got that. I did my parents, both my parents, and those all should be stored here.
Mm-hmm.
But you got. I don't know if the Frontenac has the storage capability.
right now we've been storing in the cloud.
Yeah, with the Google Drive.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We have a good amount.
I think I've got an account with that, but they probably cap you at 5 terabyte or something like that, or 2 terabyte or something. It's probably free up to a point.
Yes.
Yes.
And then as you go
Yeah.
more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Smug Mug I have to pay, and I'd have to pay more if I put. Those are just JPEGs. If I wanted to put, I think TIFF or Photoshop files, they wanted more money. So all I've got are converted JPEGs on there now.
So, anything else that?
Anything else you want to say or can think of? Or
No, as I
you think
said, get a hold of Dick Harshberger. He's got a lot of history stored away in his head. We did Tom Eldred.
Yes. And I did Richard and his brother together.
Palmer.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good one. And that was a real good one. And let's see.
We did Bob Ryan.
That was very good.
Marge Gibbs isn't here. Maybe I've got to get up to see her. She's up in Saratoga now. What did I see? Somebody just posted a map of the county populations, county population growth and decline. Saratoga County has grown something like 95% in population.
I think
Thank you very much.
Thank you
and
for doing all this. It's going to be a very valuable resource.
Yes, I enjoy doing it a lot. It's
Yeah.
been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome.